Brother Lysander was a neophyte of the Blood Angels chapter of the Adeptus Astartes, who was one of 9 warriors exiled from the chapter's ranks following the trial of Captain Leonatos, who had been found guilty of allowing one of the Blood Angels' most sacred relics, the Blade Encarmine, to fall into enemy hands. During the course of their long quest to retrieve the sword, Lysander and the others would journey into the heart of the warp space rift known as the Eye of Terror and to the demon world of Eidolon, where the blade was said to be located. As the Blood Angels journeyed across the vast surface of Eidolon, which had been divided into 4 separate warring empires dedicated to each of the prime Chaos gods, their numbers would slowly begin to dwindle one by one, due to their brothers either falling in battle, or even, in the case of a neophyte named Proteus, succumbing to the very temptations and influence of the ruinous powers. In time, however, Lysander, along with Captain Leonatos and Brother Cloten, a warrior perpetually teetering upon the brink of succumbing to both the Red Thirst and Black Rage, would successfully locate the Blade Encarmine deep within the heart of a vast Sintian labyrinth and guarded by one of the Fallen, a traitorous warrior of the Dark Angels Legion from the time of the Horus Heresy. During the subsequent battle, Leonatos would successfully retrieve the sword and with it manage to defeat the Fallen, his quest now seemingly complete. However, following the death of the Fallen, a demon prince of Tzeentch would emerge from the shadows in order to congratulate the Blood Angels on their victory. The demon prince would then use his sorceress abilities to create a portal that led back into the material realm before offering Leonatos and the others their freedom on the simple condition that they could reach said portal. The demon prince would then unleash a vast horde of lesser demons upon the Blood Angels, and in the ensuing confusion, Leonatos would become separated from his battle brothers. Realizing that he would be unable to reach the exit in time, Leonatos would toss the Blade Encarmine to Lysander, who would then flee into the portal with the sword in tow. Cloten and Lysander would then return to Baal in order to return the sword to their chapter, where they would discover that more than 12 years had passed in real space during their time upon Eidolon. Commander Dante, the chapter master of the Blood Angels, would offer Lysander and Cloten a chance to rejoin the chapter and return to their respective companies in recognition of their deeds and as a reward for fulfilling their oaths. The 2 exiles would refuse Dante's offer, however, much to the anger of Chief Librarian Mephiston, who in his rage would refer to Lysander as an ungrateful, upstart whelp, though Dante himself would instruct Mephiston to stand down. Instead, Lysander and Cloten would choose to embark upon a new quest in order to uncover the fate of Leonatos. The 2 would then journey to the planet of Sciron, a world situated along the fringes of the Eye of Terror, where they would meet with an oracle that claimed to know of their captain's fate. To their horror, they would discover that Leonatos had not only fallen to chaotic corruption, but that their former captain was intending to launch his very own Black Crusade against the Imperium. Eventually, Lysander and Cloten would attempt to infiltrate the ranks of a Chaos Space Marine warband that intended to join Leonatos' crusade, hoping that such an act would grant them the opportunity to get close to and subsequently execute their former captain. After convincing the leader of the warband, Lord Balarazan, that they too were renegades and heretics, the 2 Blood Angels would fight alongside their new brothers and aid in their conquest of an undesignated planet. After the world had fallen to the forces of chaos, Balarazan would reveal to Lysander and Cloten that Leonatos himself was en route to commemorate their victory, and not only that, but desired to meet with and reward the warband's newest recruits. But as Lysander and Cloten approached Leonatos' throne, their ruse would be discovered by none other than their former battle brother, Proteus, who now served as Leonatos' right-hand man. Cloten would then launch himself at the traitors, attempting to single-handedly hold them at bay in order to buy Lysander the time needed to reach Leonatos and slay him, although the 2 would ultimately fail in their endeavours. Cloten and Lysander would then be taken prisoner by their former captain, where it would be revealed that Leonatos was no mere heretic or traitor, but that his body had in fact been possessed by a demon of Tzeentch, one that had once been encountered and defeated by the exiled Blood Angels several years prior, known then by the name of Garshal the Destroyer. The two loyalists would then be forced to compete against one another in a battle to the death, with Lysander appearing to slay his battle brother, though unbeknownst to the traitors, Cloten would manage to survive his injuries. After Lysander had been taken away to be tortured by Proteus, Leonatos would manage to briefly regain control of his body from the demon possessing him, and would order for his forces to set course for the Master System, where a pair of fleets from the Imperial Navy were laying an ambush for Leonatos' forces. Lysander would eventually be freed from his imprisonment by Cloten, and the two would go on to instigate a mutiny amongst the ship's slaves, causing them to rebel against their masters on the lower decks. As Cloten fought alongside the rebelling slaves, Lysander, taking advantage of the distraction the resulting riot provided, would make his way to the ship's warp field generators in hopes of sabotaging them, only to find that Leonatos was waiting for him. The two would then engage in a short but fierce duel, with Lysander managing to plunge his sword into his former captain's chest and temporarily driving the demon from his body. Now having regained his sanity, Leonatos would warn Lysander of the trap that he had set for the traitor fleet and desperately urge for the neophyte to flee while he still could. As Leonatos' forces materialized back into real space, they would be caught in a devastating crossfire that began to tear their ships apart in an unmitigated storm of destruction. Before Leonatos' flagship was destroyed by the Imperial Navy, Lysander would successfully make his way to an escape pod and connect its Vox systems to what remained of his armor in order to contact and request retrieval from Imperial forces. Lysander's quest was finally at an end, but his final fate from here remains unknown. So what could have happened to him? One possibility is that Lysander's escape pod was retrieved by the Imperial Navy following the culmination of the battle, granting him the opportunity to eventually return to his chapter. If this were indeed the case, and that Lysander did indeed make his way back to Baal, then upon being reunited with his chapter, it's likely that Lysander could have been welcomed back into the ranks of the Blood Angels with open arms and no longer be considered an exile. After all, as mentioned earlier, Dante had indeed offered the neophyte the opportunity to do so once before, after he and Cloten had successfully retrieved the Blade Encarmine. Should Lysander choose to accept such an offer, then it's reasonable to assume that he would finally be allowed to undergo the final set of surgical procedures required to transform him from a neophyte into a fully fledged space marine. Not only this, but it's entirely possible that due to Lysander's many years of battlefield experience in comparison to other neophytes, he could very well have quickly risen through the chapter's ranks, possibly becoming the sergeant of his very own squad in a relatively short period of time. But then again, given that he spent many years wandering throughout the Eye of Terror, it's just as likely that Lysander could have been kept in isolation from his peers as the chapter's chaplains, sanguinary priests, and librarians attempted to uncover and expunge any possible trace of chaotic corruption within the neophyte's body or soul. Such an idea is not entirely unprecedented, as the Imperial Fist Darnath Lysander, not to be confused with the aforementioned Blood Angel Lysander, would spend many years as a prisoner of the Iron Warriors traitor legion upon the fortress world of Maladrax, only to eventually fight his way to freedom, where he would discover that over 1,000 years had passed within the material realm. After being reunited with his chapter, Darnath Lysander would be subjected to intense medical, spiritual, and psychic screening for over 6 months before being declared free of any potential taint or corruption. As such, it's perfectly reasonable to assume that Lysander of the Blood Angels could have been forced to undergo a similar such process after returning to Baal. Another possibility is that Lysander could have simply perished in the depths of space, with his escape pod being left to drift aimlessly through the void, or that it was perhaps even destroyed by a stray lance strike or piece of errant debris. But there is another possibility in that Lysander not only survived his escape from the Master System, but that he decided not to return to his chapter, instead choosing to spend the rest of his days in exile. In fact, not only is such an idea entirely feasible, but there exists an individual upon the world of Necromunda who could very well be Lysander, a mysterious warrior known to the denizens of the Underhive as Vandolph the Fallen. Vandolph himself is somewhat of a notorious figure upon Necromunda, with many stories detailing not only his sheer size, strength, and resilience in comparison to other humans, but is also rumoured to display a number of traits that can best be described as vampiric, such as elongated canine fangs, and even, should the rumours be believed, an unnatural craving for human blood. Not only this, but Vandolph is said to have been wandering the depths of the Underhive for centuries and is known to wield an ancient pattern of bolt gun in battle, one which is described by those who have witnessed it as being oversized. Because of the various physical characteristics exhibited by Vandolph, in addition to his choice of weapon and supposed vampiric tendencies, some have suggested that the warrior is somehow connected to the Blood Angels, or at the very least one of their numerous successor chapters. After all, not only are Space Marines famed for being far larger and stronger than a typical baseline human, but the warriors of the Blood Angels are known to sport a set of retractable, elongated canines which are known to the chapter's warriors as eye teeth. While Lysander himself was only a neophyte, as opposed to being a fully fledged Space Marine, it is worth noting that during the course of their training, neophytes will gradually receive more and more of an Astartes' unique organs as they undergo different phases of the gene seed implantation process. Given Lysander's apparent age when he was initially exiled from the chapter, which would appear to be somewhere around his late teens, it's likely that he would have had at least 14, perhaps even 15 of a Space Marine's 19 additional organs surgically implanted within his body prior to this event. This in turn would mean that Lysander would have already become long accustomed to both the osmodular and biscopia organs, which are responsible for increasing bone density and muscle mass within an aspirant's body respectively, and in turn will make Lysander far larger, stronger, and more durable than the average baseline human, despite being only a mere neophyte. What further supports the idea of Vandolph and Lysander being one and the same is that Vandolph, if he is indeed linked to the Blood Angels in any way, appears to lack any sign of a black carapace, the organ that allows a Space Marine to fully interface with a suit of power armor at a neurological level, suggesting that Vandolph is also a neophyte or scout marine. After all, a Blood Angel's neophyte will typically only receive their black carapace after fully ascending to the rank of Battle Brother, a sign that their training and time within the Scout Company is finally complete. Since Lysander was still a neophyte when he and Cloten departed in search of Leonatos, evident by the fact that he wore a heavily modified suit of carapace armor as opposed to a set of fully fledged power armor, then it's entirely possible that Lysander had managed to obtain passage to the world of Necromunda before going on to assume an entirely new identity. Indeed, much like Lysander, Vandolph himself is known for wearing an oversized suit of carapace armor, which serves as a further connection between the two. In addition, while Lysander appeared to show no outward signs of succumbing to the Red Thirst, a genetic flaw found within the gene seed of the Blood Angels that instills an intense craving for blood, this does not mean that he would have been able to resist it completely. Indeed, it's well known that most, if not all, Blood Angels will at some point in their lives experience an intense, unrelenting thirst for blood, though some will experience such cravings with a greater intensity than others. In order to help placate such undesirable urges, the warriors of the Blood Angels will often drink a wine that is laced with trace amounts of blood, which in turn allows them to help control their cravings in a similar manner to that of a nicotine patch, although this isn't always successful. As a result, it's logical to assume that during his time within the depths of the Underhive, should Lysander and Vandolph indeed be the same person, that the red thirst could steadily grow more and more intense, resulting in him needing to feed upon the blood of those that he has slain in order to satisfy such predatory urges. What makes the idea of Lysander and Vandolph being the same person somewhat unlikely, however, is due to the fact that Vandolph himself is said to have wandered the depths of the Underhive for centuries. When Lysander was inducted into the ranks of the Blood Angels chapter, the chapter's chief librarian at the time was, as mentioned earlier, none other than Mephiston, the Lord of Death. Mephiston himself would not become chief librarian of the Blood Angels until sometime after the Second War for Armageddon, which took place in 941 M41. The most recent sightings of Vandolph, however, as implied within Necromunda The Book of Ruin, appear to have occurred sometime around 997 M41, less than 60 years after Mephiston's ascension to the rank of Chief Librarian. Admittedly, however, there is a possibility that such claims are mere exaggerations made by local storytellers, and that Vandolph has only been upon Necromunda itself for a comparatively short period of time. In either case, if Vandolph the Fallen is indeed an exiled Lysander, then one has to wonder as to what could happen should the Blood Angels learn that their errant brother is still alive. Would they attempt to welcome him back into the chapter so as to rehabilitate him, or would they simply put him down like a rabid dog? We may never know for certain. What do you think? Leave a comment below, and thanks for watching.